I'm Indy Nidell, and this is Out of the Trenches, and I'd like to dedicate this episode to DJ Ötzi, because why not? Slavko Marinov writes, "Hi Indian crew, thank you for the awesome show you're making. I really wish all schools taught in this manner." And me too. It's my first question for Out of the Trenches, so please don't laugh. Ooh, sorry, I already have. You've mentioned how bad the British blockade was for Germany and its allies. Seeing how Russia left the war, did Germany gain access through its Arctic trade ports, and was its situation improved even by a little? Keep up the awesome work and give Flo a raise.
Another raise?
Gee, this week and every week. Okay, to answer your question, and thanks for writing. No. Not only were the Russian Arctic trade ports far off the German zone of influence, but they were no use to the Germans, or even the Russians really. Remember, ports like Kronstadt near Petrograd were some of the original sources of the revolution, and ports like Archangel, way in the north, were still loaded with material from the Allies and soldiers loyal to the Allies. So both of those areas were in complete disarray after the revolution and an ongoing power struggle. It did make it easier for the Germans to get involved with Finland, though, but that's a story we cover more in detail later on. What actually certainly did help was the control of Lithuania, Romania, and the Baltics by German authorities, which the peace in the East had allowed. Supplies like food, metals, and oil were already rolling in late 1917, and they would have certainly improved the situation in Germany and Austria-Hungary if the war had lasted longer than it did. The thing is, just occupying the ports, the farms, and the trade stations was not simply going to cut it. They had to reintroduce a trade route. They had to get production going. They had to calculate results, establish a network towards the homeland, and all kinds of stuff like that. And that's a huge effort, which would have taken months until it could have had a real effect on production and the population. And sure, Flo, you get a raise. 1 extra piece of coal a week.
Hooray!
I am a benevolent ruler. Insert applause. Eric Hartman writes, "Hello, Indy and team. I'm addicted to the Great War." Cool. I was wondering if you could tell us about the Hungarian serial killer vampire of World War I, Bela Kiss. What is your theory about what happened to him? Perhaps this would be a good topic to save for an Out of the Trenches around Halloween 2018. We're jumping the gun, okay? He thanks us. Well, thank you. That's a great one, okay? See, because every day is Halloween at the Great War. Can you add some Halloween decorations? I'm just going to sit here for a sec while you do that. Okay, Bela Kiss lived in Cinkota in Hungary, a small town close to Budapest. And his life up until the Great War seemed quite ordinary. He was married twice. He had 2 children. He was well liked by his neighbors, who said that Bela was very friendly but was quiet and kept to himself. His housekeeper, Miss Jakubets, remarked that one day his second wife sort of stopped appearing in public, and she never did anymore after that. And instead, the handsome and well-spoken Bela was seeing other women who he met through dating advertisements in the newspapers. Miss Jakubets, however, was never allowed to talk to these women. She was also not allowed to go near the big tin drums filled with gasoline that were suddenly gathering in Bela's backyard. Now, war broke out in 1914, and one day Bela Kiss was conscripted into the army, and he left his house in care of his housekeeper. And nothing was heard of him, not until 1916, as several soldiers who had been told that he had gasoline, and they needed gasoline, they gathered in his yard. They opened one of the tins, and they found gasoline. They also found the corpse of a strangled woman inside, right? But it turned out there was not only one dead woman in the tins of gasoline, there were 24 dead women in the tins of gasoline. And they were also in his house, too. All of the corpses had their blood drained, and they had marks on their necks. Okay, so they searched the house and found a secret room where they found love letters, some women's jewelry, and books about poison that were hidden, right? As you may imagine, they immediately sent out a warrant for the arrest of a soldier named Bela Kiss. But the name was quite common, and many suspected he might have been killed early in the war in the Carpathian Mountains. In October, the Hungarian police got a report that he was recuperating in a hospital in Serbia. But as they got to the hospital, they only found the decoy body of a dead soldier instead of Bela in the bed. Somebody had apparently warned Kiss, if it was Kiss, and he had fled. He vanished. The police got reports of sightings of him in Romania and in Turkey. Many believe that he had changed his persona several times and that he might have entered the French Foreign Legion under the name Hoffman. I don't know why they believed that, but what the heck. But again, this Hoffman had fled before the police could get to him. The last reported sighting of him was in 1932 as a janitor in New York City. But again, like Kaiser Soze, he was gone. The so-called vampire was never caught. Now, I personally am inclined to think he died in the war or of the Spanish flu. Because while it might not have been that hard at the time to drop off the face of the earth, he was a recognizable face as, this vampire serial killer. And he had pretty deeply established habits. I don't know. What do you guys think? What happened to him? Maybe he changed his last name to Steller, and he hid in Germany after the war. And then 100 years later, one of his descendants started working for a YouTube channel that talked about the Great War and dug up the dirty past of Tony Steller. Tony's not here right now, is he?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay, hey, Tony. So nothing, we're just talking about some things. Don't worry. Okay. Tell us in the comments what you think happened to him anyhow. Elias U. Widding asks, question for Out of the Trenches, can you shed some light on military bands? In warfare, bands would play on the battlefield, but nowadays not so much. Yeah, they did originally accompany the troops on the battlefield to boost the morale of the soldiers and, give them a marching cadence that kept the formation in time. Yeah, that was more of a thing in like the 18th and the early 19th century, though. Military bands were still around in the Great War, and some elements, like the bagpipers, Scottish bagpipers with the British Army, yeah, they were still seen on the battlefields. But on a large scale, it was mostly reduced to an activity away from the front. A lot of soldiers could either play instruments or knew a lot of songs, so they brought music with them to the trenches to either fight the boredom or keep up morale in dire times. The big military brass bands played when soldiers were marching out of a camp towards the front, for example, or during ceremonies and parades. Small combos entertained the troops in hospitals or during their leisure time. That's pretty much what they still do today. Most modern militaries, like those of Germany or Britain, for example, still play the marches of their forefathers to this day, like Preußen's Gloria or the Grenadiers' March. Of course, there were exceptions. One big one that I can think of off the top of my head at the Battle of the Somme in 1914, when the Austrians sent out the marching band as a morale boost during the battle and at a time when Austrian soldiers were being shelled by both sides. But that was an exception. If you'd like to see that episode, it was one of our early and one of my favorite episodes. You can click right here for that. And do not forget to subscribe and check out our subreddit to learn all kinds of stuff about the war. See you next time.